the best way to learn is to work for the people who are not doing what everyone else is doing. And so my entire journey into Solana was, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to learn a ton about how to build and run a company from working for these guys. It really was 6 years where crypto was sort of in the crosshairs at the SEC. It's very easy to forget those 2 years, but like there is a lot of problems happening then too.
That's a good point.
So the change now is really remarkable, and it's not just a change of administration. A lot of the stuff in crypto that feels like it's non-issue to users is actually a really big issue to institutions. So for example, when Visa was first experimenting with building stuff on Solana, they were not allowed to hold SOL. They literally could not hold SOL anywhere in the corporate balance sheet to pay their transaction fees.
Wow.
Because
how do you test a network without holding the underlying token? GM, it's day 3 at Solana Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi. We are back on Real Vision, this time with Austin Federa, president and co-founder of DoubleZero Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us on Real Vision.
Thanks for having me on.
Obviously, last time you were on Real Vision, you were still the head of strategy at Solana Foundation. So before we talk about DoubleZero, let's go back to your previous role. This is your first year. You mentioned to us before we went on air that this is your first time that you are at this conference as an attendee rather than an organizer. So how does it feel? What has changed? Walk us through what it was like back then and what it is like today.
I mean, Breakpoint has grown into such a cultural phenomenon. The first one we organized in Lisbon in 2021, there was sort of this idea of maybe we'll be able to get 1,500 people to Lisbon in the fall to be able to talk about Solana. We sold out tickets about 2 months beforehand at 2,200 people, and everyone like actually showed up. But, you know, we were capped by like, we didn't have enough catering. The venue was only a certain size. And so to come back, 4 years after that and have an entire arena show for Breakpoint is just this crazy achievement moment for the network and the community. For me personally, it is nice to not be running around backstage constantly. Ellie and Amy and the team that run the physical production and event management side of things at the Solana Foundation, they're just unmatched by anyone in the industry. There's no network that puts on any conference like this, and no blockchain conference that comes even close to Breakpoint. So it's always kind of a special treat to be back here.
I think I can speak for everyone at the Real Vision who's here. We absolutely loved it. The vibe is amazing, and it really goes to show how much is being built on Solana and how excited people are about this chain. There's just so much going on. It's remarkable. So obviously you were at the core of Solana and what's its future. What made you decide that I want to step away from that and focus on a single project?
Yeah, I mean, there's really a real privilege and treat to work for the Solana Foundation. It's an incredible place to work. There's so many great people involved in the organization. But 4 years is a long time. And, at some point
in crypto, right?
Especially in crypto. And at some point you kind of ask yourself the question of like, am I a lifer at this organization, or do I still have aspirations to go build something myself? And that's kind of a question that a lot of folks at the Solana Foundation ask themselves over time. And, Dan Albert, one of the executive directors, has talked for years about working yourself out of a job. And that's kind of like the ultimate goal of success for anyone who works at the foundation. The Ethereum Foundation has kind of a similar philosophy of like grow by shrinking, I think they call it, or something like that. And so, for me, it was this thing of like, Solana's in an incredible place. I've had this idea for DoubleZero for a while. I met 2 co-founders who were incredibly capable of making this vision happen with me. And so it felt like the right moment to say, like, I can actually step away from Solana. Solana's going to be completely fine and take on this new challenge in this new project.
Let's get some facts. 37% of you aren't subscribed to this channel. That's almost 4 out of 10 just freeloading the alpha. So come on, hit subscribe, and I promise to keep leveling up the show with the best guests and the juiciest insight. Go on, do it now.
So walk us through DoubleZero. For those who are not familiar with the project, what kind of problem does it solve? What's your aim for it? Walk us through this.
Sure. So DoubleZero at its core is an effort to rebuild the internet from first principles. It is an internet that's performance first optimized and built for high performance distributed systems like Solana. Solana is probably the preeminent high performance distributed system out there, but this network can support all different types of things, from trading systems to exchange systems, from AI systems, as well as the Solana blockchain. And the core problem that got me thinking about this in 2022 with Anatoly and some others was Solana is limited by the speed of the public internet. All blockchains today are limited by the speed of the public internet. And we know this because no system in traditional finance runs on the public internet. They all run on dedicated high performance private fiber networks. The problem is all of those fiber networks that exist today, they're all run by centralized actors with one set of admin keys. Google's network is run by Google. A high-frequency trading firm's network like Citadel is run by Citadel. There's no idea of a multi-party system. And so if you're going to build a network that allows blockchain to run faster than the public internet, you also have to build it in with the type of protections and assurances that crypto people expect. So in the case of DoubleZero, the whole network is powered by blockchain under the hood, and it's run by 15 independent network contributors. And 15 may not sound like a huge number, but it's about the same number of tier 1 internet service providers as there are out there. So in a real metric from that perspective, we're approaching decentralization levels that meet the public internet. Additionally, because this whole thing is powered by blockchain under the hood, we can provide much more data and observability into what's actually happening on the network, which helps protocol developers and validator operators understand the dynamics of where they're operating, detect problems early, and these sorts of things. But the real goal of this is just to let Solana do 1 million transactions per second and beyond. The ambition of crypto is still way too small. 1 million transactions per second is not the goal, it's table stakes.
Speaking of ambition, just the very concept of building a new internet sounds incredible. So how do you even go about starting something like that?
Yeah, well, the secret is to have 2 incredible co-founders who have worked in high-performance networking for all of their careers.
Are you sure that helps?
Yeah, so Matteo Ward, his first job was working for Global Crossing, which was the first company to run fiber all around the world at the end of the 90s. He worked for carriers and built his own carrier, did the microwave transition for high-frequency trading firms, as well as the new shortwave stuff they're using now. And Andrew McConnell, my other co-founder, spent a bunch of years in trading on network operations side. So first at an exchange and then at a high-frequency trading firm, building out their global trading network and managing the team that built that out as well. And so this was really kind of like a perfect moment because neither of them knew anything about crypto. And so this was this kind of incredible ability to bring together the type of talent that's never been in crypto before to really build a new internet. And in a lot of ways, what they're doing is the exact same thing the Wall Street firms have been doing for 20 years, but we've added in all these components and rebuilt a lot of these core systems to make it compatible with the ethos and vision of blockchain.
And how do you think Solana has evolved? First of all, when did you become involved with Solana first?
So I joined Solana at the very beginning of 2021.
And what attracted you to that particular blockchain, and how have you seen it evolve? Because obviously there's just so much competition in crypto. Everyone is battling for attention these days. So what makes Solana stand out, and what did make it stand out back then?
Yeah, so this was, in 2020, I was working for Bison Trails, which is a blockchain infrastructure company. They were getting acquired by Coinbase, and Coinbase is a great company, but I didn't want to go work for Coinbase. And we'd supported, I think, 25 different networks at the time at Bison Trails. And I was interviewing with a bunch of L1s and L2s, but not Solana. And this guy I used to work with called me up and said, "Hey, I just joined this network called Solana. We'd like to, talk to you about maybe joining us." And I was like, I don't know, I've never heard of Solana before. We supported them at Bison Trails, but I never talked to anyone from there. And he was like, just get on a call with Raj and Toli, see what you think. And 30 hours later, we had a signed offer letter.
Oh, wow.
And I would love to say that I was prescient and saw Solana at $1 and said, this will be worth $200 someday, and the president of the United States will launch a token on it. But all it was this was a a time when everyone thought sharding and layer twos were the only viable future for blockchain. And Anatoly had this very different vision. He had a vision that was market driven and DeFi driven about how we need competitive information in the same global market, in the same state machine. And, I was just, the best way to learn is to work for the people who are not doing what everyone else is doing. And so my entire journey into Solana was, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to learn a ton about how to build and run a company from working for these guys.
So what was it like when Solana went through its massive PR crisis around FTX? Because this is it's part of the lore now, right? For Solana.
Sure.
And it managed to survive that and came out stronger than ever. And I really appreciate how Solana, we saw a video, during one of the talks, kind of recapping the history of Solana, and that part of history was acknowledged. And I find it I appreciate the fact that it was talked about, mentioned, because it's, as I said, it's just part of the Solana lore. But what it was like back then for you guys, when we saw Sol go down to $8 and so many people said, oh, it's dead.
Yeah. So I started off working on product and marketing, and then right before the first breakpoint, I got promoted or demoted, I'm not sure which one it is, into head of comms. And then that comms fallout after FTX collapse, that was on my plate. And so that was kind of this crazy moment where, exchanges start delisting the token. Everyone says Solana's dead. And there's kind of crazy moment where there was, something like 20% of all Sol tokens were unstaking at a given epoch.
Were you questioning your life choices at that point? So.
No, I genuinely no, because the thing is, we knew we'd done nothing wrong. This wasn't like Terra where yes, there was just a fraud from the beginning, right? This was a very different structure. And, no one knew that FTX was a fraud. At least no one outside of maybe a few accountants in FTX knew that FTX was a fraud. And so, from that perspective, it was really just this moment of there's 20% of the network is unstaking. And then everyone kind of looked around and said, well, no one's selling. I'm not going to sell either. And over that time period, there were plenty of teams that sort of went out of business, couldn't make it through the bear. I think we only lost one technical team to another network.
Oh, wow.
Everyone else just said, you know what? We trust these guys. We think Solana can get through this, and there's nowhere else we could build our project even if we wanted to. The characteristics of Solana were that special at the time. Now, more networks have sort of gotten closer to Solana in terms of performance, but back then there was nothing else. There was no other option. And so seeing everyone sort of dig deep and keep building through the bear, Breakpoint the next year, everyone was like, oh, Solana's still alive. And we were off to the races.
Going back to DoubleZero, obviously a remarkable evolution we've seen with DePIN, but for the longest time it felt like just a promise. Are we at this stage where DePIN is finally making a difference?
I don't know if we'd really call DoubleZero DePIN. Now, it is a physical infrastructure network. It is decentralized, but most DePIN has this pretty interesting trade-off where it's less performant than traditional systems, but it has much larger reach. And Helium is the most perfect example of this. A Helium hotspot has lower range than a cell tower. If it had the range of a cell tower, you wouldn't be legally allowed to put it in your house. But you can deploy it yourself. It's a few $100s. It's there's so many advantages that come with the reach and accessibility of DePIN. DoubleZero is kind of the opposite. We are faster than the public internet by up to, 85% in some regions. But we don't reach as far as the public internet. The public internet is this marvel that, anyone anywhere in the world can talk to anyone anywhere else in the world for tens of dollars a month, right? Even the most, expensive countries in the world for internet are, less than anyone's car payments. That's an incredible accomplishment for the public internet, but it's not built for performance. And so that was really the main motivation for us, is to look at this thing and say, we can let Solana go way faster than it can without this. And I think that, is that a DePIN network? On some level, of course, but I think it's a very different type of network that we don't really have a good name for at the moment.
And is it, catering towards institutions, or is that something that an average user can take advantage of, or is that maybe further down the line?
Yeah, so anyone who runs a validator on Solana, like, we encourage you to join DoubleZero. We've got 40% by stake, 50% by number of validators running on DoubleZero today, which is, 2 months out from launch. So we're doing pretty good with that. I was hoping we get to 70% by Breakpoint, but we didn't quite get there. But things are going quite well from that perspective. But DoubleZero also supports RPCs, trade systems, all sorts of other things. And so, anyone who is at the point where they're renting a trade server to be able to, do trading, you should look at DoubleZero. Anyone who runs RPCs, you should look at DoubleZero, and validators, of course, as well.
Yeah. We spoke with Nicholas Pennant from Helios. They obviously mentioned DoubleZero.
Yes, they're great. They've been they were early adopters on the validator side, and they've been helping us test out all the RPC functionality.
FireDancer. The big announcement of Breakpoint is finally live. What does it change?
What does it change? This is kind of one of those fun questions because, the FireDancer is the friends we made along the way. It was like,
was such a buzzword for the longest time, right?
So,
like, when FireDancer?
The thing is, FireDancer actually, you could say FireDancer launched 2 years ago. And what I mean by that is the research and development work that went into profiling and understanding where to speed up Solana so you could build FireDancer. That research work has benefited the Agave client tremendously. The Agave client is so much more performant than it was 2 years ago. I mean, it's night and day. It is, 10 times faster at least in most key functions than it was back then. And so that's not obviously just FireDancer's work. There's a lot of folks at Onzo who've been really focused on performance, but that focus of the network to say, we're going to take a conscious effort to speed things up. We've all seen the benefits of that. Now, having a second independent client, in some ways, the FireDancer client could be the world's best RPC client. It is so well optimized for high throughput. Plus, it can do all the VM execution and everything as well. And so I think this is a major milestone. Like, we get to take the beta tag off Solana now.
And it has a very cool name as well.
And it has a fun name as well. I know, Agave is pretty good too.
True.
Yeah.
In late September, you had a pretty remarkable decision from the SEC that concerns DoubleZero token. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so we received a no action letter from the SEC. These are very rare in crypto, but they're pretty common in traditional finance. What this is basically is a letter that says the SEC does not see any problems with what you plan to do. And so the way this works is you write a letter to the SEC and you say, hi, we'd like to do all this stuff. Here's why we think this is okay. Do you agree?
Oh, so the famous come to us and register.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit different, but effectively, yeah, this is like, we're going to lay out for you how all of our systems work, how we think the token is going to function in this. Do you see any problems in the way this is currently constructed? And no one had gotten one of these for 4 years in crypto.
Wonder why.
And, yeah. Well, but even before that, we forget the last 2 years of the Trump administration were very crypto hostile as well. It really was 6 years where crypto was sort of in the crosshairs of the SEC. It's very easy to forget those 2 years, but there is a lot of problems happening then too.
That's a good point.
So the change now is really remarkable, and it's not just a change of administration. But yeah, we are with really the other projects that have received no action letters in crypto. They're not exactly what you'd call tier 1 projects. And so this was a really big milestone for the whole industry. It laid out for the first time a framework for compliant token launches and gave a lot of folks a view of what this is. Mari, our general counsel, is as close as you can come to a celebrity in the crypto legal circles at this point. It was very funny. She went to a legal conference a few days afterwards, and there was a round of applause for this. It's very cool. It means
I deserve victory lap.
It means so little to the average person in crypto. Everyone in crypto is oh, a no action letter. What does that even mean?
Yeah,
right?
That was my next question. What does it change? Why is it so important?
So it's really important because a lot of the stuff in crypto that feels like it's non-issue to users is actually a really big issue to institutions. So, for example, when Visa was first experimenting with building stuff on Solana, they were not allowed to hold SOL. They literally could not hold Sol anywhere in the corporate balance sheet to pay their transaction fees.
Wow.
Because
how do you test a network without holding the underlying token?
You need a gasless relayer, which is basically a way that they can pay in USDC, and then someone else turns that into Sol and pays the transaction for them, which is an incredible function that Solana can support, right? There's actually a lot of reasons why you'd want to do this. For example, if you want to onboard a user to your product and they don't have Sol already, right? Maybe you're embedding crypto deep in, like you're building like a Venmo style product for USDC transfer, but you don't want everyone to have to go buy Sol first.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons this would be very useful, but this is like a legal requirement for a lot of these folks. The reason the no action letter is so important is because it says to these folks, the 2Z token is not a security. And because of that, suddenly these fiber providers and telecommunications companies and folks that are already not particularly up on crypto, they don't have to say, okay, this looks fun, but like we need a securities lawyer to look at this. They can just look at the no action letter and they can say, this is a commodity. And we know we know what to do with commodities.
Big game changer. As we head into 2026, what makes you most excited about Solana and crypto more generally?
I think 2026 is going to be a pretty awesome year for crypto. Now, who knows what prices will do, right? If I knew what prices were going to do in advance, like I'd have several very large yachts by now.
And we would all love to know that.
Yes. But, I just think from a product standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, this was a year when a lot of things broke. Right? The value accrual story for Ethereum and L2s broke. The Reb story for Solana broke. The idea that, Bitcoin is untouchable, I think got challenged for the first time in years with just a little bit of Zcash pump. Privacy came back, right? All of these things that sort of challenged a lot of the core tenets and assumptions of crypto, like kind of broke in 2025. That's okay. Right? That's actually very good. Usually when people are saying this industry is all scams and pump and dumps and casinos is when real product gets built. And so we are seeing the start of some very awesome and interesting new products, whether that's like perp dexes on Solana, melee markets with opinion markets, using privacy in a totally different way than anyone's ever expected before, to FireDancer coming live on Solana. I'm very excited to see just like how much we can IBRL Solana over the next year.
Excellent stuff. Austin Federa, co-founder of and president of DoubleZero Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us at Real Vision.
Thank you.
So you obviously liked this video enough that you've got to the end. That's quite a big task. But listen, do me a favor. Hit the like and subscribe button and also check out what video's next because I think you'll love it. But if you want even more, and when I'm talking more, I'm talking about member-generated ideas, incredible alpha, research, everything there to help you in your journey, just head to realvision.com/join for the best financial intelligence out there and the pure alpha that's within the platform.